So it's been a while since I announced LittleBigRefresh, about 6 months or so. In that time I've spent quite a bit of time working on the project. So what does Refresh look like now that it's been under development for half a year? Looks like ass. I'm gonna skip the bullshit about saving best for last. Let's talk about the server project itself, Refresh. We've made 12 releases on GitHub and wrote a codebase consisting of about 7,000 lines of code, all of which are in C#. At this point, Refresh supports a majority of in-game features for LBP2, including things like recent activity, dive-in, score submissions, and really all the important things that make an LBP server an LBP server. It doesn't currently support LBP3, although it should connect, but LBP1 theoretically works. Most of the work has been spent on refining the API and working on a front end for it. The front end is a separate project titled Refresh Web, and well, if you ask me, it looks fresh as hell. If you've used Lighthouse's front end before, it's a similar concept, except the main difference is that it uses a bit more JavaScript to make things look prettier and snappier. JavaScript hopefully won't be a requirement in the future, as we've been looking into some technology, Angular SSR for the nerds watching, that will remove our dependency on the client having JavaScript. The hope with this is that you'd even be able to browse the website from within the PS3's browser if you want to. I don't know why you would, but you should because I think it's funny. Anyway, the focus of Refresh on the website is user experience mostly. The design philosophy has become double-click it and it runs. It means what it says on the tins. You should always be able to download Refresh, double-click the exe, and have it run with no further input. When you open Refresh, it automatically creates a database, creates a config, and just starts running. Hopefully. Realistically though, there's probably going to be some Gen 2 using weirdo out there trying to get this to work on some weird... oh. Shit. So unless you're me, you'll be able to run Refresh no problem. Of course, you'll eventually have to change the configuration for more advanced use cases, like hosting publicly, for example, and for these cases we've written a handful of guides. The thing is, Refresh isn't exactly complete. As I've mentioned, it doesn't support LBP3, for example. That said, I've been working on it basically daily, and every few days it gains another cool feature. Anyways, let's move on to some of the other projects we've worked on to help Refresh, exist. When you first connect to a custom server, in most cases you end up having to modify the game's files to point towards that new server. The initial implementation of this was in Union Patcher, but we decided to write our own patcher called Refresher to optimize the process for user experience. To help assist users in setting up their game client, we've implemented a couple features to help streamline the setup. First up is the ability to show what games are available. This is a simple dumb change, but improves the user experience so much more. You know, instead of just blindly stumbling through a folder, Refresher will try to detect where your RPCS3 install is, and in the future you'll be able to point it to your PS3, and it'll just start reading the contents of the games in that folder. This way you can just see the icon of LBP1 and go, oh hey, that's the one I want to patch. Secondly, we added something called Auto-Discover. When you type in a URL, Refresher will try to contact the server at that URL to gain extra information about it. This is helpful in two ways. One, the user is assured that what they're doing is correct, and two, the patching information cannot ever be wrong when Auto-Discover is successful. Auto-Discover is an open protocol, so realistically, any server for any game can implement it easily if they wanted to. Overall, patching using Refresher should just be easier. Double-click it and it fucking works. If you're a developer and you decide you want to check out Refresh, one of the first things you'll first notice is how weird or unique the project is, and after investigating you end up finding a library called Bunkum and go, what the fuck is this? Let me explain. In my time working on Lighthouse, I found ASP.NET to be highly annoying to work with, since LBP and other PS3 games from the era tend to consistently violate all these different internet standards like HTTP and JSON. I don't really blame ASP.NET for any of these problems. Instead, I just end up blaming Media Molecule and Sony for their frankly awful design choices. It's a problem for us since we depend on having very specific implementations for all these different standards that the ASP.NET framework doesn't easily offer up control over. That, and we can't really modify the game to adopt proper implementations of these standards. Eventually, I got fed up with the bullshit, so I got to work. So we've decided to write an HTTP server and framework from scratch, so every part of the stack from the socket up is controlled by us. Why? Well, LBP has shown us that we need byte-by-byte control of the protocol to properly interact with it, and here we are. It might sound like a lot of baggage to deal with for an LBP server, but the truth is it's half the reason I work on Refresh. Working on a project like this is pretty fun as a programmer since you're actually in control of the whole software stack as opposed to being restrained by a library you can't control or debug. There's been problems, sure, but there's been bigger benefits. So one of the cooler things that's happened since releasing Bunkum is seeing software pop up using it. Turkross321, a good friend of mine, ended up writing a custom server for sound shapes based on Bunkum with a similar software stack to Refresh. And by that I mean he stole half the source code from Refresh. Nah, but seriously, it's been pretty neat seeing this project develop as he frequently posts updates and we get to bounce ideas off of each other in the open developer chat. In most ways, his server actually ended up far more functional than Refresh in its current state, so I've got to hand it to him. If you're interested in sound shapes, I'll leave a link to their Discord server called the Egg Shapes, whatever the fuck that means, focusing on the modding aspect of the game in the description. So yeah, that's basically everything that's happened in the last 6 months. It's a pretty long time to try to cover in one video, so there are a lot of cool things that I wasn't able to really mention in a short amount of time. From now on, I'll try to consistently make new videos every so often, detailing new updates whenever I have something cool to show off, but that's about the 6th time I've said that on this channel, so we'll see! If you want more updates, I invite you to join our chill Discord, where I'm constantly posting new updates in an open and free to use developer channel. We're a pretty chill community, so feel free to come hang out. Anyways, let me know what you guys think. Until next time. Maybe.